I remember when I was in college, I think I've shared with you that I got a DWI, and I remember waking up that morning, and I remember seeing the bed. It says, "Today's the first day of the rest of my life." I spent the next um, I spent the next 12 hours probably pacing through that room more than I do on this little platform here. And I was trying to get out because I had to get out. So they set my bell at $1,500. Most people that got a DWI, their bell was set at $500, but mine was set at $1,500. And I don't know why. I mean, I was totally nice. I was respectful of the cops and everything. But they set and I couldn't get out. I was trying to make a phone call, and the jail guard, they're like, "Well, that's really up to you how you get out of here. We're not here to help you for that." And I was stuck in jail. And I ended up spending, and then I forget who it is that has to come, the clerk or whatever, the county clerk, where they have to come and they have to write your bell and have to set everything. And so they didn't show up till like much later that day, and I was dependent upon a friend of mine to finally come and bail me out later that night. I was in bondage. I was in bondage. There was no way I was getting out of jail without somebody else. I was in total bondage. Now, many of you came to the housewarming last. Thank you so much. That was I had a great time, and the Lord's blessed me. I got this condo, and it's not much, but it's cozy and it's good for me. But I can tell you right now, each month I now have a mortgage. I have a mortgage. And you know what? That takes up a certain amount of my income. And hopefully it's not going to take 30 years to pay that off. But as long as you've got that mortgage, guess what? You don't have the freedom within that space of money that's allocated to that mortgage to use that money however you want. It's got to go to that. That is in bondage. And the question is, are we in bondage based upon what we think we have to submit ourselves to? And that bondage can come in a number of ways. Let's track in with the text in verse 2 of chapter 5 of Galatians. Paul says, "Behold, I, Shaul, I, Paul, Apollos, I say to you that if you receive circumcision, Messiah will be of no benefit to you. I testify again to every man who receives circumcision that he is under obligation to keep the whole Torah." Now, what's interesting is, as we looked at last week, Paul talks about those going back again into a yoke of slavery. Now, wait a minute, these are Gentiles. They haven't converted to Judaism. How is it that they're going to go back into slavery if they have never converted to Judaism, if they've never been a part of this? What is Paul saying? And in fact, he makes this case again back in chapter 4. And he's saying, look, to go into something, if you've already received salvation, if you've already received the fulfillment of what the Torah, and one of the functions of the Torah is to lead somebody to Messiah. That's the whole purpose of the Torah, is to lead somebody to faith in Messiah Yeshua. And to go back in and to make a conversion to something else after you have come to faith in Messiah Yeshua, Paul's saying, look, it's as though you had walked right back into your pagan idolatrous practices from the past prior to your faith in Yeshua, because now you're relying upon something else other than what God has offered to you for the purpose of salvation. I think there's a couple of things that we need to keep in mind here. Paul is not speaking against Jewish identity markers for those that are Jewish to have their children circumcised. That's not what Paul's arguing against here. In fact, I would even say that Paul's not even arguing against Jewish identity markers. He is, but within a certain context, and that's because they are being abused and misapplied to these Gentiles. Look at Romans chapter 2. Romans chapter 2, verse 25. Romans 2, and by the way, Romans is the sister companion text to Galatians. So if you're reading Galatians, you can go back and you look at Romans, and it's Paul writes Romans probably about 7 or 8 years later after he writes the book of Galatians, but he's hitting on the same topics in many ways from maybe a little bit of a different angle. But in verse 25 it says, "For indeed circumcision is of value if you practice the Torah. But if you are a transgressor of the Torah, your circumcision has become uncircumcision." It's saying, look, if you're coming into the Torah for the purpose of salvation, if you're going underneath circumcision and you are converting to Judaism because you think that this is going to give you right status with God, it's not just the conversion process that you're obligated to, you're actually obligated to the entirety of it. And Paul makes this point. "So then, if the uncircumcised man keeps the requirements of the Torah, will not his uncircumcision be regarded as circumcision?" He's saying, look, it's possible that somebody could be actually more moral, because one of the roles and the functions of the Torah is to give ethical guidance in the life of people. "And he who is physically uncircumcised, if he keeps the Torah, will he not judge you who, though having the letter of the Torah and the circumcision, are a transgressor of the Torah? For he is not a Jew who is one outwardly, nor is circumcision that which is outward in the flesh, but he is a Jew who is one inwardly, and circumcision is that which is of the heart by the Spirit." And this goes right back to Deuteronomy chapter 10, the circumcision of the heart in Deuteronomy chapter 30. "Not by the letter, and his praise is not from men, but from God."